Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating, and air restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit billhowe.com. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
Governor Gavin Newsom continued his campaign to Trump-proof California with a visit to the San Diego border today. Thanks for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Newsom says President-elect Donald Trump's proposed tariffs and mass deportation policies would destroy the state's economy. Well, KPBS reporter Gustavo Solis has more on the governor's visit.
The governor toured the border and spoke to local business leaders. He says that threats of a 25% tariff on Mexico would cripple California's economy, rising the price of everything from gasoline to groceries.
Small businesses that will lose customers, jobs that will be lost, the inflationary impacts on every single one of you, the cost of food that will go up, cost of tomatoes at the supermarket, the vegetables, over half that come in from Mexico.
Newsom went on to say that the agricultural industries of San Diego and Imperial counties would be hit particularly hard by the proposed tax.
Those farmers, ranchers, will be impacted disproportionately if these tariffs go into effect. And I didn't even bring up the mass deportation components of it.
He pointed out that roughly half of all California farm workers are unauthorized immigrants. And companies, he says, are already starting to reconsider investments in the San Diego-Tijuana region.
I just met with leaders in the business community that said already the momentum has been impacted as it relates to nearshoring in anticipation with the uncertainty of these tariffs.
Newsom's visit to San Diego is part of a much larger state tour that includes stops in Fresno and Bakersfield. He is highlighting state efforts to boost economic and workforce development. Gustavo Solis, KPBS News.
San Diego County held a grand opening for its newest Immigration and Refugee Welcome Center today. It's a hub to connect new immigrants and refugees to vital resources and services. KPBS North County reporter Alexander Wynn got a look inside.
This is the county's second Immigrant and Refugee Welcome Center. The first one was opened in National City in 2023. Since then, the County Office of Immigrant and Refugee Affairs held various listening sessions in the community to determine where the next one should be. Barbara Jimenez is the Community Operations Officer for the County Health and Human Services Agency.
We heard that North County really wanted the opportunity to have a welcome center here. So this is really created to be a welcoming environment for our families in the community.
Nearly 64% of the county's foreign-born residents live in North County. Jimenez says the center was created to bridge the resources and services gap. Workers here are trained to have a holistic approach to providing care.
And they'll kind of just want to be able to get to know the person, see what the needs might be. Is it something connected to housing? Is it something connected to legal services? You know, what are the different needs? Answer their questions.
She says it takes about 2 to 3 visits before someone becomes comfortable enough to ask for help connecting to services. Services such as employment, Medi-Cal, and CalFresh. The Welcome Center is inside the county's North Inland Live Well Center, putting all services in one location. Inside, there's a children's area with books and activities to keep kids occupied and extra desks for community groups and organizations. In addition to the resources and services provided here, the Welcome Centers also connects immigrants to partners such as the Mexican Consulate and the County Department of Education for things such as paperwork or to enroll their children into school.
We will be having a table here for information every month.
Alicia Curbapalma is San Diego's Consul General of Mexico. She says the consulate will work closely with the Welcome Center to help immigrants from Mexico.
That if they have any doubt or any concern about the situation, that they can come to the consulate. We have plenty of programs and services to provide them. Especially legal assistance can be provided totally free for our nationals.
This is a safe place to ask for those resources, and then getting families connected to those community partners that are providing that specialized, services.
The center costs about $300,000 a year to operate and is open from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday. Alexander Wen, KPBS News.
We're getting to be a little bit chilly as we head through some of our overnight hours with the new air mass working its way on in. Temperatures falling back into the 40s. We'll talk about how the offshore flow is changing things coming up.
A powerful earthquake with a magnitude of 7.0 struck off the coast of Northern California today. The U.S. Geological Survey says the epicenter was over the Pacific Ocean about 50 miles southwest of Eureka. At least 5.3 million people were under a tsunami warning after the earthquake struck, and that warning has since been canceled. No major damages were reported, but the shaking knocked items off of shelves and businesses and homes in Humboldt County. The quake was felt as far south as San Francisco and was followed by multiple smaller aftershocks. More than 300 Kaiser mental health workers have been on strike for the past 7 weeks. They are demanding more time for patient tasks and better pay. KPBS health reporter Heidi DeMarco spoke with a few patients who say the strike is leaving them feeling abandoned.
Savannah Pfeiffer, Alana Molino, and Christina Jones became friends at a Kaiser intensive outpatient program. All three say the strike has made it harder to access mental health care.
It's hard enough trying to even admit that you need therapy or you need antidepressants on a regular basis. It's hard to admit that to yourself. It's hard to admit it to someone else. And it's hard to go through the trauma with a therapist, a stranger, in order to get that.
Alana Molino is a history teacher. She says it's difficult restarting therapy with temporary providers.
And because they're on strike, we're seeing different therapists. And you have to start pretty much from scratch with the new therapist and uncover all of the trauma again that you've just worked out with someone else.
As a school mental health caseworker, Savannah Pfeiffer empathizes with the strikers.
But at the same time, it's like, what about us? Like, we got forgotten and left, hung out to dry, basically.
Pfeiffer says before the strike, it took about 3 weeks to get an appointment, but now it's longer.
4 months for a psychiatry appointment is not okay, and the psychiatrists aren't even on strike. So
a Kaiser spokesperson disputes the 4-month wait. They say they've scheduled more than 235,000 appointments for members since October 21st. The state requires HMOs to provide a non-urgent mental health appointment within 10 days of the request. But Pfeiffer says she's filed 2 complaints since the strike began.
Just trying to get adequate care and get, treated like a human being and get seen in a timely manner and have some continuity of care. But
Christina Jones is a community organizer. She says it was tough when the social workers running the outpatient program were replaced.
But when they left, the type of care that we received after, it was so subpar and raggedy.
Kaiser says temporary staff are qualified providers, but the union argues they might not have specialized training. Kaiser also says crisis clinicians are available 24/7 to all patients with urgent cases. But Jones had a negative experience.
I let the person know I was having an emergency, and they were like, "You don't sound like you are, though." And so I was like, "Oh, girl, hold on." I was like, so it's this whole performance and telling your story to stranger after stranger in this system that says that it cares.
Despite the challenges, the 3 women say they found support in each other.
Yeah, it's like a glimmer of light in this darkness, because there are other people who have mental health issues, and we aren't the only ones.
As the strike continues, they're looking at other health insurance options, including paying for therapy out of pocket. In the interest of disclosure, Kaiser Permanente is a KPBS underwriter. Heidi DeMarco, KPBS News.
Anyone looking to make sense of America's political circumstances as Donald Trump heads into a second presidential term next month might turn to U.S. history, both early and recent. Still, KPBS's Amita Sharma reports that political scientists say even though the past holds some similarities, the country's future is likely without parallel.
Hawaii is in the middle of so many things at once.
Ask Sam Popkin, a UC San Diego political science professor emeritus who has written extensively on the American presidency to plumb U.S. history for a comparable political time, and he pauses.
Possibly Andrew Jackson, and he actually turned out doing some very strong stuff.
As this PBS video on Jackson explains.
Earlier presidents vetoed bills only when they were unconstitutional. Jackson vetoed bills he didn't like. He blocked infrastructure projects, dismantled the National Bank, and replaced government employees with political friends.
Popkin says Jackson also removed the Native Americans from their land in the South, and it was brutal.
And he had been lots of incidents of what today would even be called, if not ethnic cleansing, ethnic clearing.
Popkin is not suggesting President-elect Donald Trump's plan to use the military to deport millions of undocumented people, possibly including between 150,000 to 300,000 in San Diego, is the same as Jackson's ethnic clearing. There is another similarity, though. Jackson sought retribution against political enemies. So did former President Richard Nixon. Trump has long said publicly he wanted his political adversaries to be prosecuted, jailed, even executed. He famously called for Hillary Clinton to be locked up in 2016. But the era that best informs Trump's next 4 years as president is his first 4 in office, when he wiped out numerous environmental rules, signed into law large corporate tax cuts, and revamped the federal judiciary.
He made some important changes in his first administration.
Thad Kaiser is a UC San Diego political science professor.
He's taking bigger swings now.
Take his notion of a deep state, that a web of bureaucrats across the federal government are actually the enemy within. This time, Trump has nominated people who have expressed deep disdain for the agencies he wants them to run. RFK Jr., a vaccine skeptic who wants to pause disease research to head Health and Human Services. Tulsi Gabbard, described as a Russian sympathizer, as Director of National Intelligence, and Fox News host Peter Hegseth, who has been accused of sexual assault and been described as, quote, an anti-establishment crusader to run the Pentagon. Kash Patel, a former defense lawyer who says he'll come after journalists to head the FBI. Again, Kaiser.
They want to change the institutions or even tear them down rather than just re-steer the ship of state.
Neoconservative writer Bill Kristol says that's a requirement for Trump's ultimate goal, total control.
Trump wants to call over to the Justice Department and say, you need to look at investigating this person. I want to see the files on that person. He wants to call over to the EPA and say, hey, lay off this guy I know who's being charged with you're investigating possible environmental problems with his companies.
Kristol believes Trump will carry out Project 2025, a conservative plan to reshape the federal government in a way that consolidates his power. The plan includes giving the president more say in federal and state prosecutions, implementing mass deportations, and undoing certain civil rights protections, such as barring discrimination in the workplace. Kristol predicts justice will be less blind, liberties fewer.
Freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, political freedoms, freedoms can be curtailed, and it can happen gradually, and it doesn't all happen everywhere all at once. But I think after 2 or 3 years of Trump, we could really see an erosion of some of these things we take for granted.
And that erosion, he says, represents a step toward autocracy. The central question is, will the harm be reversible?
I'm pretty worried. I'm pretty alarmed.
He says the country's history has no precedent for where we are now. Amita Sharma, KPBS News.
And Amitha's story is part of our Public Matters initiative. You can learn more at kpbs.org/Public Matters. City leaders in Imperial Beach established a special committee to explore stronger tenant protections. KPBS South Bay reporter Corey Suzuki says the decision comes at the urging of dozens of renters who are currently facing eviction.
Joshua Lopez, followed by Robert Lewis, followed by...
City Council members made the decision during their regular meeting late Wednesday night. The special committee will work through the holidays to explore options for new tenant protections.
It's a real concern that we may have people out on the street. So I would love to find that perfect balance that's a good fit for us here in IB.
The decision comes after the owners of a large apartment building in Imperial Beach called Hawaiian Gardens issued a mass eviction notice, ordering everyone there to move out by the end of January. Dozens of residents there have urged the city council to intervene by passing new protections and temporarily freezing all evictions. It's still not clear if an eviction freeze will happen. Council members discussed the option on Wednesday, but didn't take any action. Advocates for landlords argued that new tenant protections could make it harder for small landlords to cover repairs and other costs. George Shing is with the Pacific Southwest Association of Realtors.
It'll make it less likely that they'll be able to do that and more likely that they'll need to sell it to one of those larger corporations that have been mentioned before.
Joshua Lopez lives at Hawaiian Gardens. He appreciates the city council's decision, but wishes they had more certainty.
I can't really hang my hat on that because, it's not just me. It's, I have my mother in my care, so I can't really cling to that too much.
The city council plans to discuss the committee's work in January. In Imperial Beach, Corey Suzuki, KPBS News.
If you're in the market for a new car, well, you may be shocked by the sticker prices. The average price for a new car has gone up nearly $10,000 in the last 5 years, according to Edmunds. Jen Sullivan explains how you can score the best deals.
Jingle bell, jingle bell, jingle bell rock. If a new car is on your Christmas list, you may find the best deals right now.
We're phasing into the deeper part of December, and we'll start to see the deeper transition from 2024 model year to 2025.
Ivan Drury with Edmunds says car dealerships are motivated to sell their current cars to make room for next year's models. But you may be shocked by the high sticker prices. Edmunds' latest data shows Americans paid an average of nearly $50,000 for a new car. That's almost a $10,000 jump from 5 years ago. The average price for some American cars like GM, Stellantis, and Ford is even higher.
We'd gradually seen before the pandemic, but really escalated 2020, 21, 22.
High interest rates are also making prices skyrocket. The average rate on a new car loan is about 7%. And Drury says for a used car, interest rates can be as high as 11%. Edmunds found the best priced cars are Toyota, Honda, Hyundai, and Nissan. You may find the best deal if you buy an electric car. Right now, you can get a federal tax credit up to $7,500. But the EV market has been hurting. So Drury says many dealerships are offering even more incentives for consumers to buy electric or lease.
Those vehicles have sat so long that it's not just the $7,500 credit. It's like low APR on top of that during the time that you're leasing it.
For Consumer Watch, I'm Jen Sullivan.
A team of NOAA scientists are back in San Diego after conducting a survey of marine life off the West Coast. They spent the last 4 months aboard the Bold Horizon studying species of whales, dolphins, and seabirds from the U.S.-Mexico border to the U.S.-Canada border. And the study takes place every 5 years, and while it will take some time for the team to put together a report, preliminary data shows a shift in where certain species are found.
I can tell you right now, just from the raw data, that we're seeing a lot of northern shifts in the distribution of certain species. Our waters are warming. The cooler, more productive parts of our ecosystem are going further north, and we're seeing that immediately by seeing where these predator species are shifting as well.
And the NOAA team collected the data through various means, including drones, acoustics, and genetic sampling.
We've had our bouts with low clouds, a little bit of moisture, but all of that is changing with more of an offshore flow. What that will do is warm us up, especially west of some of the mountains there. Some of the numbers will be going back into the 70s and 80s, so it's very warm for this time of year. Of course, the low clouds, the fog do return on Sunday with more of an onshore flow setting up, and then we flip again on Monday. It's a season where we just tend to go back and forth this time of year. So we will be continuing that trend. As we head through tonight, 44 the low in the city as you work your way towards Oceanside, 39. Head to Ramona, 39 as well, and Mount Laguna coming in the mid-30s. So kind of a chilly night on tap for us as we venture into tomorrow, though pretty bright. Like I said, not much in the way of low clouds out there. 70 the official high. El Cajon coming in at 82 degrees. Escondido also making it to 82. So there's some real warmth again from some of the winds coming down off of the mountains. That warmth not only persists as we go through Friday, but will also be present even into Saturday. So we'll notice those numbers staying a little bit higher. Notice what happens towards the coast. 70s, then to the mid-70s on Saturday for highs. Lots of sunshine out there. That's all part of that offshore flow. Kicks back on Sunday, so we will allow a few more clouds and temperatures in the upper 60s. And then, of course, we're getting more sunshine back into the forecast again on Monday with more offshore flow. Look at the 80s here on tap for us Friday and Saturday for our inland communities. And if you are, say, going to be out for the end of the weekend, back to the lower 70s for highs. Mountain communities, not much change here. We hold on to the 50s, mostly in the mid-50s for the upcoming days. And for our desert communities, you can find those numbers steady decline here back into the 70s through the next couple of days, including into early next week. So some more comfort found and more steadier temperatures there. For KPBS News, I'm meteorologist Melissa Constanzer.
Here's another look at today's top stories. Governor Gavin Newsom says California's economy would be devastated if Donald Trump follows through on his threats of tariffs. Today, the governor toured the San Diego border and spoke to local business leaders. Newsom says a 25% tariff on Mexican goods would cripple the state's California's economy, raising the price of everything from gasoline to groceries. And he adds some companies are already starting to reconsider investments in the San Diego-Tijuana region. San Diego County opened its newest Immigrant and Refugee Welcome Center today in Escondido. It's a hub to connect new arrivals to resources and services. Nearly 64% of the county's foreign-born residents live in North County. The Welcome Center is inside the county's North Inland Live Well Center, and it will be open Monday through Friday. And here's a look at what's happening tomorrow. Housing affordability is a top concern for Americans. Estimates for the number of needed homes stretch into the millions. NPR's Morning Edition is discussing the tricky business of quantifying the U.S. housing shortage.
I'm Jeff Bennett. Tonight on the NewsHour, billionaire Elon Musk visits Capitol Hill with his plan to slash government spending. That's at 7 after Evening Edition on KPBS.
If you live in Ocean Beach or parts of East County, you likely have some visitors from time to time. They are parrots, and the sound that they make has become something quite familiar about San Diego. But where did they come from? Ken Kramer has the story.
Here's what one of them looks like up close. They're Mexican red-headed Amazon parrots, and if you live in Ocean Beach or Point Loma, you've likely seen them or heard them.
I would say that the flock probably varies from around 100 to maybe as many as 300, 350 birds.
Sometimes if they get injured, they end up here at the Avian and Exotic Animal Hospital in Mission Valley in the care of Dr. Jeffrey Jenkins, who has spent years studying and photographing the parrots of Ocean Beach.
They nest in the date palms, in the tops of the date palms where the leaves are still have been trimmed, but they haven't fallen off the trunk of the tree.
They feed on the fruit of carob trees, date palms, and eucalyptus berries, and they make a very distinctive sound. Some people call it a screech or a squawk.
So that's very similar noise when they're just grumping with each other, you know, and they spar with each other and things like that. You make some more noise, huh?
Ernie, that's this parrot's name, was brought in from Ocean Beach as a baby. So long in healing, he couldn't survive in the wild now. He has a friend here named Jarek, who's a little bit of a different kind of tropical parrot, and came from another flock that seems to hang around East County in El Cajon. Jarek's home is in Central and South America, not San Diego. And as for Ocean Beach Ernie and his pals?
They're from the Gulf Coast of Mexico originally. Their ancestors are from there. These guys were probably brought here by people. They didn't fly here.
In fact, it's impossible that they flew here, he says. It's just too far. So how did they get here to Ocean Beach? One theory is that they came back as pets aboard tuna boats.
Originally, I was told that they came from a pet shop that burned down in Ocean Beach in the 60s. And I literally went to the newspaper and went through all the archives on microfilm looking for the history of a pet shop burning down in Ocean Beach. And as far as I can tell, there was never a pet shop that burned down in Ocean Beach in the 60s.
There's also the story of the bird woman of Ocean Beach, who perhaps raised parrots she had rescued. There was a fire and the birds were released. That may also be true, Dr. Jenkins says. And he's been told parrots were around the Theosophical Center, which later became Point Loma Nazarene University, as far back as the late 1930s. For his part, Ernie isn't saying, content to play rubber band bungee with the hospital's Dr. Jane Stout. Mostly indifferent to people they don't attack or carry human disease. One Ocean Beach home even celebrates them in a stained glass window. If you don't mind the squawking, they're pretty great.
You know, the tropical world, hearing the parrots, you know, do their joie de vivre celebration that the sun's come up in the morning is part of living in Ocean Beach.
The Parrots of Ocean Beach. For maybe as long as 80 years now, they've been hanging around and about San Diego.
If you want to see more of Ken Kramer's stories about San Diego, then be sure to catch his half-hour show tonight and every Thursday night at 8 o'clock right here on KPBS. And you can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org. That's going to do it from us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Have a great evening.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating, and air restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit billhowe.com. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marcos Shiley, and by the following: and by viewers like you. Thank you.